Welcome. Today we're going to talk about the books I read in February 2024. Overall, I actually read physically 9 books, 3 fiction and 6 nonfiction. I also added 3 fiction books on Audible this month for a total of 12 books. Unfortunately, my current system for really recording and keeping like metrics and Obsidian doesn't allow multiple reads of books because of how it does the dates. So I'm not going to really count the 3 rereads in Audible as books read this month because that's just how it's going to work. Let's dive in first to the fiction books. Looking at my Audible queue, I noticed that there was Bobiverse Book 4 called Heaven's River coming up. And so I wanted to go back through the series as, starting at the beginning of the month because my credit came out on the 25th. And so I read We Are Legion, We Are Bob, For We Are Many, and All These Worlds as 3 books in the Bobiverse universe. So I'm trying to avoid some spoilers, but ultimately Bob, Robert Johansson, is a normal guy, gets hit by a car, but he is rich and he is already just, paid to have his body frozen so that at some point in the future he might be able to be resurrected. Unfortunately, Faith, a religious sect, comes into power politically, determines that anyone stored like that is not actually alive and that they are owned by the government. And so Bob becomes a cube, gets his brain basically cloned into a computer, and has to beat out some other people and, is supposed to be a spaceship going off to colonize the worlds. So again, multiple countries, multiple, future countries are in this, right? There's Brazil, there's like a whole bunch of different, the politics have changed by the time Bob has come back as a computer. What else happens? They meet an alien species that they help. They meet an alien species that wants to kill them, that has a technologically superior technology in many ways. They meet a few different species as well. They save one that's going to be eaten up by that very superior of the others species, and they save them. And ultimately, I very much enjoyed this series as much as I did the first time. It's excellent. I definitely need to buy the books as well, so I actually have a copy of them because they're really good. Now, overall, I didn't finish actually Heaven's River. Technically, I finished it yesterday, but also going to recommend that one, but it's going to get counted in next month's books. Next up is Changer by Matt Gemmell. I've enjoyed his short stories often. I've enjoyed his site when he talks about technology stuff sometimes, mostly about fiction now. But honestly, I just couldn't do it. This is like a standard story where some professor is suddenly thrown into needing to be basically a secret agent because he knows, in this case, physics, right? It's kind of Indiana Jones-ish. Ultimately, it's just not believable. I made it about 10% of the way through and I could not stomach the story. I could not stomach the dialogue, which is terrible. It just wasn't a good one, so I abandoned it. I consider this book read because I have read as much as I'm going to read it. Now, Between Starfalls by Kaeth. I guess that's how I'd say it. Again, the ultimate rule in this book is that you don't leave the path on your way out to the, I guess the big ritual of the year. It happens twice a year. But if your son leaves the path, you kind of throw those decisions to the side and you might leave it anyways. So this is ultimately starting off with one kid that takes off and gets lost. And then 4 friends that are trying to find this kid because one of them is their parent. It involves an underground race. And that's probably the only spot that I found a little stilted in this book, is I found some of their conversation with this underground race, the Kamalti, just a little stilted. They're supposed to be a very formal race. They're supposed to be, very steeped in tradition, and you have to do things the right way. So I can understand what the author was going for, but it felt a little strained in that respect. Overall, though, I actually really liked the story. I liked the world building. I'm already reading another book in that same world, following Thanos, one of the 4 heroes in the beginning. And I'm enjoying that book as well. I got to read it quick because it was a Sunlight Man by Brandon Sanderson comes out tomorrow, and it is already waiting for me at the bookshop. I can't get it till Tuesday. So I need to finish up the other one from Kaeth and then move on to the Brandon Sanderson book. And I actually have a couple more books from this author as well, so I'll be looking for more of their work. Next, final fiction book, Quill and Still by Aaron Sofair. So like many books, this starts as a get transported magically, mystically to a new world. Unlike most books, you don't suddenly become the hero. You're not the chosen one. There's no big reveal that they've all been destined waiting for you and you're secretly the king's child or something. You go there, and probably the biggest thing that stuck out to me is watching how the main character, our protagonist, just comes to terms with a world that doesn't value you only because of your economic input into the world, right? If you they become an alchemist, and as they become an alchemist, chemist, that was their actual profession on Earth, they get a loan from the city government in the city. And they're like, okay, well, what happens if I default on the loan? As they're like working it out, and they're like, well, if the business doesn't run, we just send someone who's run a successful business like yours, and they help you for their year. And, they take a little bit of payment for that. Oh, okay. What if it still doesn't work? Well, then we just sell the stuff that we, you bought with everything, and we recoup what we can, and you can just go live. That's fine. There's no, we don't give you another loan, but you can just go live. You can just continue to live in the city. You can continue to read books. You continue to get food. You continue to have housing. You are continuing to be taken care of just because you exist, without the economic capitalist overtones that are in so many books where you still have to, if you miss a payment or anything else, like they just want you to succeed. That's it. Their only goal is to make you succeed. And they're like astonished that you could live in a world where if you miss a payment or miss anything, where they just throw you out and you're out on the street. They are continually baffled at the harm that, honestly, the society we live in does to people. Now we're into nonfiction. We're going to start with Read, Write, Own. Oh, a lot of shine on that. From Chris Dixon. So this one I borrowed from the library. Got to return it probably tomorrow. This is a tech bro, techno-utopian book that's trying to tell us how the blockchain is going to democratize ownership in a way that previous technology never has been able to. And I say this is tone deaf because Chris Dixon is part of A16Z, which is like a big VC fund that is funding all these platforms that are trying to own everything and take everything from people to turn profit into, for the owners for A16Z. So he's saying how this is all bad, but he literally helped fund it, helps decide what technology platforms succeed by their funding. While the book was decently written, it's hard to buy into the main premise that we should ignore all the crypto scams. All right, see Number Go Up by Zeke Fox. So we should ignore all these scams that are run on blockchain and say, but it's just the technology. Just dispassionately evaluate the technology. Don't look at what everyone else does that's bad with it. As if you can separate what is actually done with your technology, what is done with your ideas, from the idea itself. It's kind of hard to do. So ultimately, blockchain technology has mostly stolen billions from people. It finances crime. Again, we look back to Number Go Up by Zeke Fox. And I'm going to likely do a longer review of this book when I've got some critiques of it to read first, some other stuff to educate myself so I can read a deeper evaluation of it. Next, DevOps with Kubernetes by Stephen Fleming. It's a bad book. If you are anyway technical, this is not the book for you. This is possibly an okay book for a manager who has no technical background whatsoever, teaching you first about DevOps and then about Kubernetes. But ultimately, it's super basic. I think my 13-year-old could read it and get as much as there is to get out of the book. On top of that, there is a myriad of spelling mistakes. There's tons of grammar errors. It feels more like this was a book quickly written to market Stephen Fleming's expertise in the area to managers or something. It should have been a blog post. It should have been a shorter blog post than that book actually is. And that's it. Go read 2 or 3 blog posts about DevOps, 2 or 3 blog posts about Kubernetes. You're going to find far better stuff. Go read DigitalOcean stuff or any Google stuff on it. You're far better. Forget it. Don't read this book. Not recommended. Foreverism, Grafton Taylor. So this is an exploration of nostalgia and how it continues to influence society today. Tanner defines Foreverism as the tendency for society to continue to look back at the past as some golden age and then to try to recapture that age today. Biggest thing that stuck out to me was Tanner's insightful commentary on how we never want anything to end currently. We continue to reboot properties, say media properties, books, anything. I even think of, what's the show? There's a video YouTube channel that I watch often that talks about stuff that happened in the 80s, right? Or looking at old video game stuff like that. We continue to reboot these properties instead of coming up with new ideas. And why do we do this? In large part because it is safer for media companies to reboot than to try and take a risk on a new product. This is part of the Theory Redux series of books, which I think looks really interesting. They have stuff on capitalism. They have stuff on feminism. They have lots of very interesting books. I think there was 17 when I was looking through it at one point, and they all look really interesting. So that whole series is probably something that I would look at. And there's links to all these books in the show notes within the blog post if you're watching this on YouTube. Next up, Breaking Busy, Kindle read. Don't have it with me. It's a typical productivity book that gives you some well-trod advice on how to stop being busy. Compared to other books I've read in the genre, the only thing that Worthington adds to this is that a bunch of exhortations on how God doesn't want you to be busy and that you should follow your God-given life that he wants for you, which is, calmer, theoretically. On top of the Christian themes, we have some themes of hustle culture, and both of which turn me off, to be honest. The Christian faith, God will do it all. Like if you're just not trusting hard enough. See, conspirituality or manufacturing happy citizens, which I've talked about before. You can find those in my curtismchale.ca/books-read. If you look through there, you'll find all the books that I have read. So ultimately, I think this is not a good book. It has nothing really except some mysticism and Christianity to it as justification for your actions. I'd recommend anything by Cal Newport that's far superior than this book. Duly noted. What is it? Jorge Arango. So this is a book on how to take notes. If you're looking to get started on how to take notes, this is a decent book. Arango covers the basics of how to take good notes, how writing and notes don't simply influence your thinking, but they are where thinking happens when you actually take it and write it down. All right, even as I wrote this, the script for this, I had to think more about the books, dive into them again, look at my notes, and decide, what was important to share in this format. If you've read some other books in the field, this is not going to revolutionize. There's nothing amazing, some good insight in here. You're going to pick up some tips, but some of my notes on it is this chapter was talked about how to take notes. That's it, because there was nothing new in that chapter for me as someone who has extensively looked at some videos, read blog posts, written my own stuff on it, done my own courses on it. Just not quite something new in the field. If you're brand new, accessible book, I would recommend a good read for someone beginning in how to take notes. Finally, The Apple II Age by Laine Nooney. This book takes a look at how the Apple II led the way in taking computers and making them practical for home use. Nooney walks us through the software ecosystem at the time and shows how Apple placed no restrictions on developers and how, because it had no restrictions, there's lots of things developed for the platform. Also, it was a little more expensive, but very powerful computer for the time. So the base stock, RAM, CPU, all that stuff was higher than lots of places so that it was useful and good software to run on it, like VisiCalc. Now, my biggest takeaway, my biggest, continual baffling thing was this is nothing like what Apple is now. The lack of restriction, the hey, do whatever, the hobbyist culture is kind of gone. Apple is looking to extract any possible cent out of you they can all the time. Not a big fan of Apple for that, to be honest. And that's it. That's a short recap of the 12 books I read in February 2024. A few of these, like I said, Read, Write, Own, I'll probably do something deeper on, and Foreverism, I'd like to do something deeper on both of those books. If you like these videos, thumbs up below, YouTube, all that YouTube stuff, you know what it is. Subscribe, hit the bell, yada, yada, yada. But really the best way to support the channel is to become a member, curtismchale.ca/membership. You will get notes on all the books that I've read. You actually get access to the notes I've taken in Obsidian right there if you want to see them. That's it. Have an awesome day.